Welcome back, folks. Can you? I think we're all back. Hello again. Wow. I caught the almost most of that last session until I had to pop back out. And what a treat to hear from Savia, and so wonderfully moderated by Madan. I take away several lessons from Savia, one of which is just the importance of energy and the power of storytelling. And what an incredible storyteller! Well, on the topic of story, we are absolutely privileged to have two entrepreneurs with remarkable stories addressing some of the biggest challenges that India and potentially the world faces today. Joining us now is Rhea Mazumdar Singhal, CEO and founder of Ecoware, and Gaurav Mehta, CEO and founder of Dharma Life. Both just incredible individuals. I wanted to share a bit of background before we jump in about the big problems that Rhea and Gaurav are seeking to address. The logic for this is, if you want major innovation, if you want change to happen, and if you want really to create an impact, the trick is to find big problems the world needs to solve. No one's going to celebrate you for solving a small problem. But of course, the big problems also involve their own challenges, and we'll hear from the individuals who are solving these big problems. Can we show the slides, please, onto our screen? Perfect. So I want to start with Rhea and the remarkable work she is doing. Last month, the Indian government shared some rather depressing statistics. Plastic waste in India has doubled in the last 5 years, and the average annual rate of increase has been almost 22% in the last 5 years. If you can go to the next slide, please. Now, the effects of this. I'm from Kerala, and every time I visit Kerala to see my family members, on the one hand, I'm struck by how beautiful the place is, but on the other hand, I'm also struck by just how much trash there really is, and how this incredible beauty has been sullied by the actions of all of us. And a prime culprit for this is packaging. These convenient, are in many ways products that help preserve the environment through better, lower wastage, all sorts of other positive outcomes. These are, however, leading to substantial, major implications, not just for aesthetic reasons, but for the world at large, for our own health, for everything else that surrounds us. Next slide, please. This is where Rhea comes in. Ecoware, the company she started in 2009 as an entrepreneur after a distinguished career actually in the pharmaceutical industry. Rhea switched, and I'm keen to hear that story from Rhea about going from pharma to the world of ecological packaging, Ecoware, and she's one of the largest producers of ecological packaging in India at the moment. Next slide, please. This challenge, of course, we see getting even worse in many ways. Rhea was pointing out to me earlier. I was asking this. The theme of our session now is my COVID, my journey through COVID, and I was asking her about what COVID has meant in this world of plastics. And again, these objects that save us in so many ways. Few can argue with the importance these days of having masks and disposable. Actually, there may be some merit to that, perhaps. But this has meant that plastic waste has been larger than ever. And all of those masks and those gloves that we're disposing are ending up in our rivers and in our streets and in our pavements. Now, anyone who has taken a ride on an Indian railway today or railroad today will recognize plastic everywhere. I'm happy to say that among the many accomplishments Rhea has had, the Indian Railways has embraced the products that Rhea produces from agricultural waste. So she, along with Dharma, with Gaurav at Dharma Life, are bringing rural India to the rest of the world. In Rhea's case, by transforming and applying agricultural waste to other life-changing or hugely useful outcomes. Let me move next to Gaurav. Gaurav Mehta, CEO of Dharma Life, also approaching a big and hard to challenge, hard to solve problem. Next slide, please. And Gaurav and his team at Dharma Life are seeking to address the challenge of livelihoods for women in particular in India. So those of you who are on this panel know this from personal experience, and indeed some of you may have been seeking to solve this challenge. 25% of Indian women are actively engaged in the labor market, which is working or looking for work. 82% of men are. Now, in the last 15 years or so, that rate has gone even further down. So India has, at this point, among the lowest participation rates among women in the labor market in the world. And indeed, many of the neighboring countries near India, Bangladesh and others, have had better records of engaging the talents and the abilities of women in their own societies. Next slide, please. Now, COVID has meant that there have been transformations in the labor market. Jobs have been lost, some have been gained. But there is a sense in our interviews and some work we're doing, there's a keen sense, especially in rural India, that jobs are scarce these days. This is a question that has been asked around the world every few years by a polling agency. And the question is, when jobs are scarce, men should have more of a right to a job than women. Do you agree or disagree with this statement, or no opinion? India is among the countries where a significant majority, in the case of India, about 2/3 of Indians, men, in this case, that includes men and women, agree with the statement that when jobs are scarce, men should have more of a right to a job than women. So perhaps it's not surprising that if you look at, next slide, please, the statistics around female labor force participation, that has gone down to a record low in India. And this is among, again, the lowest in the world, 16%, as these jobs have disappeared. Now, let me pause there. These are the big challenges that Rhea and Gaurav are seeking to address. Now, for their work, they've received several awards. You can see some of those awards on your screen here. Rhea won the Nari Shakti Puraskar Award from the President of India. She's a young global fellow at the World Economic Forum, among many other lists where she's always in the top 100, top 20, top 10 leaders, especially women leaders in India and beyond. Um, Gaurav has won, among other, one of many awards, is the LBS Alumni Award of the alum who created the biggest impact in the last 10 years. Gaurav was also a young global fellow at the World Economic Forum. We have the unique opportunity to hear from Gaurav and Rhea about their story. So let me turn things over to them. Let me start with Rhea, with you. Uh, what prompted you to go down this journey? You were at Pfizer, working in the pharmaceutical industry. What prompted this journey from pharma to Ecoware and now beyond?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Professor. So I think for me, health impact has always been very close to my heart. The toxicities of plastic, I suppose, were first as a seed was kind of planted in me when my mother was first diagnosed with breast cancer when I was about 19 years old, and I was studying pharmacology at the University of Bristol at that point. Um, and obviously having worked at Pfizer and then specifically in looking in their oncology portfolio and breast cancer and colon cancer, just sort of deepened that understanding for me. Um, I got married and I moved to India, and it was just shocking to see how freely people were eating out of plastic. They were littering everywhere. We threw all our waste in one dustbin. We didn't segregate our waste. And we had no formal way. We still don't have formal waste segregation, right? And I think we, it just sort of hit home. And having used similar products living abroad, and India being, a biomass rich nation where raw material was not going to be an issue, I was like, why don't we just try this here as an experiment? And see if it works. And honestly, that's what we did, and safety being paramount. So the three guiding principles for me were particularly safety. So whatever we created shouldn't change the nutritional value of the food that you put in it, right? That like plastic does. It should be safe for the environment. The second thing is that we were, developing country. We were purpose driven. We wanted to create our jobs, be clear about our impact. And the third was authenticity, because there's so much greenwash that is out there and a lack of understanding, that we wanted to make sure that whatever we did was genuine, was authentic, it was certified, and we were seen as pioneers, basically, and as like true solutions, if the lack of a better word. Um, so I went into the wholesale, the big markets here in New Delhi, and I asked them to give me 3, 4 products that sold well in styrofoam and plastic, and I said, let's just recreate this. Let's offer a better alternative. They gave me a few plates and bowls, and they said, this sells really well. My father-in-law, bless him, I keep calling him my tech support, but he's a lot more than that. He's a serial entrepreneur from IIT, and honestly, it has motivated me to become an entrepreneur at that point in my life, and has been a really immense part of this journey. And he helped me sort of set up my manufacturing unit, because I had no know-how on that side. So it was great to work with, the technical brains, the engineers. We set up a small factory in Dehradun, just outside Dehradun, and we had like 20 people, and we said, let's just create these 4 products and see what happens. Because obviously there was a new price point, there was a new concept, there was a new industry. We were just like, let's not overcomplicate things. Let's, as much as we can. And it took off. The first large client we had that year was the Commonwealth Games, and we had serviced the entire Games Village, all the stadiums, and it just gave us a bit of confidence to say, like, okay, this is interesting. It gave us a bit of a boost, and we grew. Delhi being our home base, we just sort of built our channels of distribution, I got head down, chipped away at it, and honestly, 2 years in, realized that this is not an experiment anymore. And and that was a big decision, because my husband also quit. um, he's the next investment banker, so he quit his role and came and joined me in the business. We grew fourfold. We went from a 20 people team to 120 people team. 2 machine factory to like a 20 machine factory. 4 products to now 40 different products. And we work with various. Our focus is always has in the last 10 years has been food and beverage, just because it's been the easiest way to sort of, I guess, reach a consumer, right? So you touch, you feel, you're interested, you're curious, and you want to know more about what we're trying to do. And so we've made deep inroads with the travel food sector, with the e-commerce, with the D2C. We're present now in over 16 countries. We work with 26 distributors across India. We've done an eco flight with Etihad Airlines. We've done the Indian Railways. We work with Subway, Cinnabon, a whole bunch of restaurants. And I think moving forward as an organization, we're just looking now to support other industries as well and keep innovating. And that's where we're at. And we're obviously really proud of the impact we've created, because we've created jobs. We've displaced over 1 billion pieces of single-use plastic. And 100% of our revenues derive from a circular economy model. So, we're just looking to scale that impact and keep going.
Well done. Thank you so very much, Rhea. We'll come back to some of those successes and challenges you may have faced. But before I turn over to Gaurav, I'm struck from your story also about one of the joys of working or being around entrepreneurs is the role you see the role of the individual and her context so much more vividly than if you were representing a large corporation. We get a glimpse into your family, your motivations, and the business, the individual, and society all come together. Thank you for sharing that. Gaurav, actually, that's very related to your story as well of the individual, family, and how you got started, and why seek to address why go into addressing this huge issue. Go ahead, Gaurav, please.
Sure. Thank you, Rajesh. Good evening, everyone. So my story is kind of I started Dharma Life. It's now been a 11-year journey. So during my MBA, but previously born and brought up in Germany, worked as an investment banker and in private equity for some time, studied in Europe. So kind of was based here doing, working in the financial services space, looking at renewable energy and consumer and internet businesses. But then decided, I think while I did work in the social space part-time before with Pratham, I kind of went through a bit of a personal incident, which caused me kind of, I think, to reconsider my life priorities. Was lucky to survive that incident, the health incident, and decided that I think probably it's worth trying to change my priorities, try to make a difference. Before that, I was spending 20% of my time on the social sector, but 80% in the PE space. So that happened. I survived that incident. I decided to quit everything, went for my MBA at London Business School, and during that MBA, I had focused on two things which interested me, and I think both were kind of linked to my past in a way. One was to look at the education space. I was working. My family has been in the education space in India for some time in Delhi, and then I think that space was close to my heart, and then so I looked at that, but then decided that that would not be something I would pursue. So I decided to kind of invest into a startup to do this from my past kind of private equity life. That seemed to be the easiest option. And the other thing which interested me was, and you've talked about, Rajesh, the women workforce participation issue. Actually, I was super interested in that space because, when we used to, similar to, I think, Rhea, she also came back to India when she got married. But for me, I was coming every year, spending time with my grandparents and family, extended family in Delhi. And the poverty on the streets was just, it's very shocking if you're coming from outside India, right? So this was because you observe it. I mean, then when I spent a few months in India on a different project, I kind of thought that would be something which, trying to find a way to create livelihoods would be something which would excite me. So, and I chose that path, and we developed the business model at LBS. I think I found a couple of quite a few of my classmates actually were excited as well to do something. So we all came together as part of business school courses, designed the model, iterated, pivoted, failed, etc. So whatever the circle is, and then decided during the summer between the 2 years of the MBA to move to India to try it out. And the model we came up with was we would recruit people from a village who didn't have a job, and then get them to train them in entrepreneurship and sales skills, and get them to work on, kind of solving developmental challenges at the village. And so that model would achieve two objectives. One, it would help create a livelihood for the people we are recruiting, and secondly, it would help address some of the major challenges around health, energy access, gender, and livelihoods at the village level. So these are the four areas we picked, and now I think we have a network of 17,000 entrepreneurs. Most of them are women. We found there was a long journey with testing out different kind of models. Initially, we were gender neutral. While you've mentioned the women workforce participation point, I think that's something which after 2-3 years came up, and we were generally looking at how can we create jobs, because general jobs are a problem. But then we found over the after a few years that the impact if we had a female entrepreneur was much higher, and however the female ratio was very, very low. So because self-selection was largely male, this is a role which requires people to go door to door, sell products and services which have a social impact. So think of a solar light, cook stove, water purifier, sanitary napkin, run a behavior change program, and also use technology to do that. Now, it was not something where we got women from the beginning. I think 90% were male self-selection at the beginning. So what happened is we went back though in the impact assessment, found that the 10% women we had a much greater impact because they spent the money on their families. So it was a much bigger upliftment and of the family and community, which is what we wanted to achieve. So we kind of reiterated or pivoted our whole model, redesigned everything, and now we are 80 to 90% female at the 17,000 number. There's a couple of inflection points in that journey, but we'll talk about them later. But that's kind of the background why I got into this, and now it's been an exciting journey in India. I think we are now in 45 to 50,000 villages across 14 states. So it's been a privilege and honor to do this, and a long way to go, because you see the stats you have shared, Rajesh, are, still I think we're probably making a minuscule impact, but I think so lots of people have to do this so that we balance that ratio. The dream would be that this question doesn't pop up of, I think the question you mentioned, that shouldn't be a question. I think it should be balanced, but there should be no gender discussion in that topic. It should be balanced and equal.
Yeah, in fact, that is my thank you, Gaurav. And in fact, that is my question to each of you. Two related questions. One, how has COVID changed what the potential impact of what has COVID meant for you looking back, but especially looking forward, and what does that imply for this audience as well? What can we see from your vantage point? Yeah, so the impact of COVID and just any reflections on the world looking forward. Rhea, maybe from your perspective, what have you observed, and what do you think about the world moving forward, and from your perspective?
Sure, thank you. So I think from a business perspective, COVID has made products like Ecoware even more pertinent, right? Single use has equated to hygiene. We want everyone to use better alternatives, not regress and use plastic. So it's, as amazing as that looks, there have been real day-to-day challenges that we faced in the last 2 years. And I think, Rajesh, one of my things, like we've had a chat, and just losing women employees, right? It's so hard in India because when I've had, great talent, young girls come and work for us at the organization, very aligned to our values, doing really well, and then we have lockdown and a wave, and their parents are worried, and the city's not safe suddenly anymore, and they have to quit their jobs, which is a real shame, right? So And it's the same thing that's happening not just at the front office but at the factory as well. So that's something I wish that we could try and figure out. But as a business strategy, I think we had a strategy meeting earlier this year, and we've just said, look, we've learned from the several lockdowns, we've learned from the last 2 years. It is here to stay. So let's use the learnings in the last 2 years and just say that, okay, whatever happens, we've got to keep going. And I think that as a team, we've really come together in the last 2 years, which has been fantastic because we've actually grown our team. We've grown our presence across the world. We've remained resilient. And it's when you're true to what you're trying to do, when you just keep reinforcing that vision, I think that's your focus. And I think that's how you can actually, that drives the motivation and determination. And ultimately, I have 120 people team. We are responsible for a lot of livelihoods, and that's a huge responsibility. So as much as the last 2 years haven't been easy, I am really proud of the fact of how we've come together, how we are where we are today. And it's been a lot of and we've learned and we've kept moving. And I think that's what's really important, because today it's COVID and tomorrow, honestly, it could be something else. So yeah.
Thank you. No, it's so true. And there's one thing we've learned is to recognize the uncertainties in the world around us. Now, your business model used to especially rely a lot on door-to-door sales of these socially beneficial products. Of course, the lockdown meant that you could not. The Dharma Life entrepreneurs could not go door to door and do this. The lockdown also pointed to what rural India really wanted. Maybe you could talk a bit about that and your forays into livelihood creation as well as on education, especially, and how that pivot happened during COVID.
Yeah, so I think this whole the situation obviously was, as everyone would have faced, completely uncertain, and the uncertainty kind of meant that you had to really think. First of all, it required a lot of personal strength and resilience, which at the beginning, to be honest, it was a very, very hopeless situation and felt like, or uncertain. So where we drew our inspiration from was from our women entrepreneurs. So what happened was, then after the first week, when all this was uncertain, COVID hadn't reached the villages, but there was so much kind of media noise and uncertainty, and then you started seeing the migrants walking back, that the uncertainty in the minds of the women entrepreneurs was very high. But they came forward quite quickly and said, look, can we do something? Can you help? What should we be doing? And we took a lot of strength from that, because the women entrepreneurs kind of said, well, we are there, we are being asked, we are an influencer in our village, people are asking us, so can you tell us what should we be doing? So the first months were spent jointly with our LBS colleagues, with you, Rajesh, and others, I think, around understanding the situation. And the good thing was that it really, I think I would call the COVID pandemic a Six Sigma event for digitization in any case. And because people just, they came on Teams, they came on Zoom, they came on such platforms, and all of a sudden entrepreneurs became the connectors. And so it pivoted to that point by itself, and we were able to talk to anyone in the village on Zoom or Teams. And that kind of meant that it opened up a lot of doors. While the supply crisis is something we worked on, I think you mentioned on, Rajesh, the point on what they needed. I think obviously the first months were spent on delivering essentials and doing all this emergency response in terms of distribution using our systems. But then quite quickly, the pivot moved into, okay, the other problems are, apart from the health challenge, which obviously was the most important one, it quite quickly moved to livelihoods and education. So the two areas, in addition to our model, which we're working on, we added in the pandemic, and we are still kind of perfecting, are focused on how can we create more livelihoods for other women. And there's a program called Jaya, which we launched, which specifically now works on women workforce participation and connects women from villages to skilled areas they would like to pursue through digital platforms, and then helps them start the business as well. So that's one area we added, and I think it's probably one of the most exciting areas to work on going forward. And the second area was we found the challenge of actually that was an employee initiative, a team initiative. The children were not able to study in the schools were shut, so the children were very it was a risk that they would fall behind. There is a risk, and that's obviously well documented. But our team came together and started teaching them on Zoom, and then this has now evolved into a platform where we're enrolling kids into kind of assisted digital tutoring. And so these are two examples of things we added in our model. But again, I think we see Dharma Life as an ecosystem to do these things. So and there's a lot of pivots and tests and experiments. I'm talking about the ones which seem to have promise, and there will be a lot of probably 10 more which have failed in the process. But that's kind of, so I would say our model, I think it's become more clearer that we are an ecosystem. So that means we have to keep testing and iterating and adding new verticals to use our women entrepreneur presence and reach at the last mile. And if anything, the pandemic has made that stronger. In terms of lessons for the world, briefly, I think, it's been talked about a lot, but I take the one thing where this whole piece around iterative kind of problem solving, or addressing these challenges in uncertainty, I think has never been as present. I mean, at least not in my lifetime. So I think if I take one thing back, I think it's this continuous test fail or succeed model, which we talk about a lot in terms of when we learn this at business school, but it's never been more required on the ground. And that obviously, with the technology lens, it's also not been possible to do it as quickly as it is now. So let's leave it. That's one thing I would mention.
So true, and this has also been the impetus behind DL Labs that I'm proud to say Dharma Life has been working with the Wheeler Institute and our team of researchers to figure out what is actually happening. So I remember, Gaurav, those Teams calls. First of all, it was remarkable us being on Teams, 2 years ago with villagers in Bihar and other places, and them telling us, us asking, what are the kinds of things you need? And the answer seemingly always was jobs and well, health. There was some information, health information, but education especially. And it says wonderful things about India, about priorities, and about what is seen as crucial among individuals, in this case in rural India. It also says wonderful things about how each of your organizations has pivoted either to scale up, in Rhea's case, and to look beyond the set of current products and services, and in Gaurav, in your case, also going completely digital in very many ways, and pivoting completely. Now, to the group at large, I have a little exercise for us. So this is you've heard two stories of, as a number of you have pointed out in chat, of business doing good. And this has been a core question. The role of business in society, and specifically business for good, has been a core question that has been on many of our minds. And it's a question that my colleagues and I have been asking audiences all around the world. If you could put up the slide, please, I'll share a set of questions for our group that who are with us. The slide, please. The question is about, there it is. What is the foremost way? So there are many ways in which businesses can do good, but what is the foremost way, if you had to pick one of these, in which businesses do good? Is it one, by engaging in corporate social responsibility? Two, by paying taxes in the appropriate jurisdiction so that the government can then pay for the needs of the people? Number three, by creating employment. Number four, by selling products and services that are needed. And number five, by creating wealth for shareholders who can then decide what to do, perhaps give to charity or something else. If you had to ask which of these five ways in which businesses can do good, which of these is most important? Now, I took away from our discussion over the last half hour points 4 and 3. In Rhea's case, Rhea, you mentioned the importance of these products and services relative to other products and services, and you mentioned the keen sense of responsibility you feel towards those who work with you, for you, by creating employment. Um, uh, any reflections, Gaurav or Rhea, on this way in which businesses can do good, and what this means, given your careers in business?
I mean, from our perspective, look, I think the climate crisis is one of the largest challenges that we face today, right? Obviously, in addition to COVID. But I think that I wouldn't want to choose just one of these things. I think they all go hand in hand. And I think it's important that, businesses see sustainability as an opportunity, as a value addition. And it's, people and profit and planet have to go hand in hand. It's not one or the other kind of thing. And we've got to change our linear economy models to a circular economy if we really, as a business, even want to survive, the next 5-10 years. I mean, climate change is affecting everybody. And I would say it's not necessarily by creating wealth for shareholders, but creating value and long lasting impact for like all your stakeholders is what I would, I would really want businesses to kind of focus on.
Thank you. Gaurav?
I think from my perspective, Rajesh, from the points, they're all, I agree with Rhea, but I think though we're moving to a world, I think, where embedding the impact in your business model becomes essential. So I'm not sure whether we can separate. I think it's just, I think, I mean, the more and more, while organizations have hugely important CSR departments, and I think, or they're called shared value or whatever other various names now, I think this has been evolving. I personally think this whole the last couple of years, with both the extreme push towards climate change prevention, as well as the COVID crisis, means that every business has to embed the impact into their model over time. And I think organizations which won't do that will probably not have a very long lasting trajectory. I mean, I think that I'll be probably bold and on to say that, I think, and that's why I think, while all the things the list is, I think at some point the organization will do all of them, but if the core impact is not embedded in the model, it's unlikely to survive across time, over time.
So true. So true. Speaking of surviving over time, I understand that these videos that of what we're saying will be surviving over time. But there is also a pictorial depiction of what just happened coming up. So can I request at the appropriate time that we show that pictorial representation of what we just saw? Wow, Gaurav. Uh,
That's pretty amazing.
Looks awesome.
Yeah, I would have a hard time just writing that down, let alone drawing all of that.
I hope we can get a copy of this. I'd love to kind of I feel like just look at it in more detail. It's amazing.
We have, I understand, 2 minutes. Any quick 30-second reflections on what you took away from this?
Gaurav, why don't you go ahead?
I think what I liked is it seems to capture the journey, and we've kind of come the journey in the conversation. I think that's really well, from the pause and recalibrate down to the iterative process to the impact later. I think that's what I take away. It depicts the journey very nicely. And
I think sorry.
Please go on.
Please.
No, I was gonna say that I think it captures the madness of being an entrepreneur in the last 2 years really well. So
Wonderful. Well, thank you for not just being mad entrepreneurs. Thank you for being wonderfully inspiring entrepreneurs, and for doing everything you are doing to make this world a better place. We're so very grateful that you've been with us. Now, a couple of notes before we jump into the next session. Number one, we will have another set of luminaries, actually entrepreneurs from that have who have created change by creating change within organizations, among others, the government, large multinationals. So Nick Hughes and just note
Gaurav, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay. Just wondering if it's just...
I think Rajesh.
If you're on Rhea, but glad you're right. You're being up, and it's absolutely okay.
Professor, are you
I think Rajesh.
frozen?
Yeah,
Okay.
you may have lost Rajesh. Well, I think
Alright.
great session. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Ronak will take over.
Yeah. Thank you, Rhea, and thank you, Gaurav. I think Professor lost internet connection. And thank you, everyone, for joining. We will see you for the next session. All those who are on AirMeet will get an option to join the next session, and those on YouTube can continue watching the same stream.